Edwin Chadwick was born on January 24, 1800, in Manchester. His mother died in his infancy, and he was raised by his father, James Chadwick. The father was a liberal intellectual who contributed greatly to Edwin's infusion with political and social ideas from early on. A small period of Edwin's childhood education was in a boarding school, but after the age of 10, he was homeschooled by his father and private tutors. His father married in the 1820s, a marriage that resulted in Edwin's younger half-brother, who is the baseball icon, Henry Chadwick. Starting at the age of 18, Edwin apprenticed at an attorney's office, and by 1830, he became a barrister. He was self-educating himself and advancing his knowledge using the new scientific approach and thinking of ways of applying it in government work. He also managed to introduce himself into the literary circles and soon became friends with two of the most prominent philosophers of the day in Britain, John Stuart Mill and, more importantly, Jeremy Bentham. He became a literary assistant to Bentham and a friend to the extent that when Bentham passed away, he left Chadwick with a considerable legacy. Equally important in his career, Chadwick made friends with the preeminent and leading doctors of the day, like Thomas Southwood Smith and Neil Arnott. All those acquaintances, literary, social, and medical, exposed Chadwick to a plethora of ideas and would contribute greatly to social and health reform initiatives that Chadwick would seek during his government tenure. He started his government work in 1832 in the Royal Commission to supervise the implementation of the Poor Law. A couple of years later, he was able to reform this old law. In 1834, as the secretary to the Poor Law Commissioners, he advanced his reform ideas. Individual parishes were organized into poor law unions, but unfortunately, each one turned out to be the infamous workhouses. Chadwick favored a centralized system managed by officers paid by a central board, ideas that were adopted by the government. Chadwick's scientific and statistically based approach would form the foundation of all his initiatives and plans, and his success would encourage future governments in the UK, the US, and the rest of Europe to follow similar approaches. Chadwick's first foray into the health and sanitary realm would start with the typhus outbreak in 1838. Chadwick recruited his doctor friends to investigate the outbreak. He also sent questionnaires to every poor law union and talked to officials on the ground, ranging from surveyors, prison governors, and police officers, all the way to factory inspectors. All the information that he gleaned from everyone was organized and published in Report on the Sanitary Condition of the Laboring Population of Great Britain in 1839, and the supplementary report was published in 1843. He also recruited John Rowe, a surveyor, and together they studied the effects of water drains and freshwater supplies. Through their studies, they found it was an absolute necessity to provide permanent water supplies and a drainage system to households, an experiment that greatly diminished premature mortality. Water supply and drainage were represented as an arterial and venous system for households. The public greatly embraced the initiative. All these ideas were made into the Waterworks Clauses Act of 1847, which became law, and in which Chadwick had the foresight of limiting the profits of the water supply company to 10%, while making provisions for watering the streets and cleaning the sewers. Chadwick had bigger plans for extending those sanitary measures to towns and for using the drainage water in agriculture. However, raising money at that time proved to be very difficult because his costly project had to fight against a hugely more popular expansion of railways all over the country. Chadwick's work in the government eventually led to the Public Health Act of 1848. During his years in the government, Chadwick was hated for his ideas regarding the workhouses for the poor, even though he was admired by the elite in the government and outside. He even corresponded with Florence Nightingale in her formative years regarding her methodology of practicing nursing. He then helped promote her work in the intellectual circles that he frequented. After being on several government commissions, Chadwick finally retired in 1854. But for the remainder of his life, he volunteered his opinion on sanitary, health and other major British issues. In 1884, he was appointed the president of the Association of Public Sanitary Inspectors, and its head office in London is called Chadwick's Court to honor his name. His other contributions included investigating child labor in factories, the organization of the police, the humane treatment of railway workers, maintenance of roads and other aspects of education. His most significant contribution was his use of scientific and statistical methods to collect the data and thereby advocate policies that could improve the results on the ground. He was knighted by Queen Victoria in 1889 in recognition of his contributions. A year later, in 1890, Edwin Chadwick died at the age of 90 at Surrey. Nowadays, Chadwick is celebrated for his public health initiatives that were liberal and even radical ideas during his era. However, during his lifetime, and for a considerable period of time after his death, Chadwick was largely hated for advocating the workhouses. Those institutions were perceived as a means by which a cruel bureaucracy policed the lives of the poor. So, Chadwick's legacy is that of a pioneer of sanitary and health reform, but also of a ruthless bureaucratic officer who trapped the poor in miserable working conditions. That's it for today. If you liked this episode, hit the like button and share the episode with friends and family who might like this type of content. Subscribe to the channel, and if you feel like it, leave a comment or an opinion. Thank you, and catch you on the next one. Goodbye.